I'd like to call the Environmental Control Committee meeting to order at 7:15. Present are committee members Scarl, Gilchrist, and Kelly, all of council, the mayor, law director, HR director, safety director, special assistant to the mayor, and guests. On the agenda tonight is Resolution 2022-121, an ordinance authorizing the City of North Olmsted pursuant to Section 941.01 parentheses D of the Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Olmsted to partially contribute to the cost incurred for refuse collection by owners of certain residential structures not otherwise authorized to receive refuse collection services from the City of North Olmsted and declaring emergency. Madam Mayor, would you like to speak on this or have?
Thank you,
Doesn't
Mr.
need.
Chairman. Mr. Massarolo is going to present to council this evening.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr.
Council, the legislation regarding the refuge pickup that's before you tonight is the city's proposing a 25% pickup, picking up the cost of 25% in the year 2023. It's a one-year deal and will be reviewed by council each year. The administration's plan is to come back next year and ask for 50%, the following year 75%, and then eventually 100%. This would include recycling and weekly bulk pickup. It is important to note that this is only pickup for single-family residences that take their waste and recycling to the street. This does not include apartments or condos that use dumpsters, and it does not cover any commercial properties. All the streets that are a part of this are listed in the legislation and also should have been provided to council separately earlier. We worked with Republic Services in going through their numbers of what they had and also what our service department went out and counted as well. We determined that there's 652 homes that would qualify to have the city assist in picking up 25% of the bill. For budgeting purposes, however, we decided to use 675 homes just to allow a little bit of buffer and leeway in there in case, again, Republic Services, using their data, they're confident 652. Our county, we're confident 652, but we wanted to leave a little bit of leeway just to be safe in case there is a house that was missed or something along those lines. The contract for refuge pickup in 2023 is $18.94 a month per home. So at a 25% cost that the city would be picking up, it would be approximately $4.74 a house each month on those private streets for a total city cost of $38,394, again budgeting at 675 homes. The total contract is based on 10,480 units for 2023. That's the contract that we have. This is separate from that contract. And that cost would be $2.38 million. When we add in these 652 homes, that would bring the budget up for expenditures next year on refuge collection to $2.42 million.
Thank you. Let the record reflect the Recreation Director and Service Director are with us this evening. Okay, I'll open up for questions. My first question is the 25%, that was derived by just budget constraint or a personal thing with the administration? Can you just explain why that 25% came about, please?
Mr. Chairman, when we had endeavored to look into this, it was early in the year. We were not sure what was going to happen with the economy that we were facing, and we wanted to make sure that our city budget could appropriately absorb these extra costs moving through the next 4 years. And so we thought the most responsible way to handle it is to start at a 25% pay-in by the city, and then the next year move into 50, then move into 75, and then eventually in that fourth year, the city would absorb 100% of the cost. And that's how we came up with those numbers. Again, we wanted to make sure that we were being mindful of the city budget, but then also making sure that, like, we are going to get this done as well. And we didn't want to have the process be drug out more than it needed to be. So we thought a reasonable approach would be over a 4-year period to phase this in.
Okay, thank you. One other item I have is, Mr. Massarelli, you talked about there'll be nothing with the apartments or the condos at this present time. Not to interfere with this ordinance that's before us tonight, but I'd like to have some conversation about the condo situation moving forward. Sometime, after the holidays or in January sometime. I know they have, there's some of those in each one of our wards, and I'd like to see if that can be included, to be fair to the condo owners that either work here in the city or pay residential taxes too. So that's what I'd like to see moving forward. That's all I have. How about for committee members? Any questions? Okay, Councilman Lippert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify, the residents that are impacted are the streets that we're addressing. What's the newest of those, what's the aging or how old have those streets been since they've been built? That would be the youngest impacted here. Any idea? Is it like 30 years?
So, I think Moonlight Drive would probably be the most recent build. And do you know, Director Schofield, about how old those units are?
The first one's been in 2004.
So 2004 would be the most recent of these, of the streets that we're talking about.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking this, so I believe the whole concept of the way this service worked, right, was that they were private streets being built, and at the time there was concerns of putting garbage trucks and trash trucks onto those streets based on engineering studies or what the city was willing to support from maintenance of the streets. I think that's what I've heard in the past, that was one of those drivers of why this wasn't just picked up as part of the collective. Does anybody have a more factual or confirmed reason on how this came about, that we weren't paying for it? Mr. Grow? Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Apologize, Mr. Chairman.
It predates, it goes back well into the 90s, if not before that. And I can't speak to why that particular line was drawn, but I do recall hearing that same explanation about just not entering private property to pick up the trash. If you could get it to the right of way, then we'd pick it up. If you can use the now using the appropriate canisters that provided by Republic, then it could be handled. But that's my understanding. Is I think the same recollection you have.
Okay, thank you.
Back into the 90s, at least. I know it was present back then, and I'm sure it probably predates that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilwoman Heeman?
Thank you. I'd like to start with a comment, and that since the city was never going to be responsible for the roads, and they don't use a different truck, they come on the same day, they don't come on a different day, they don't use a smaller truck, and I don't think that they ever did. I find it hard to believe that that was the only consideration at that time. I can tell you that the streets are not even as wide as they should be, and there is a development that unfortunately the storm lines only go down one side of the street instead of both. So I think that was somewhat of a failure on the folks in the seats at that time, that they didn't require even stormwater to run down both sides of a street. But that said, my questions are with regard to the home ownership. I would concur with Chairperson Scarl that rather than just these streets, we look in the future toward the home ownership. So that could include condominiums, but exclude apartments, because it's ownership versus rental. I think that I would like to also know if you can tell me, what's the expiration date of our current contract?
The current contract is set, it's a 5-year contract with 2-year option renewals. Right now, year 5 would be in 2024. We do have an option year in 2025 and an option year in 2026 if we choose to exercise those.
Thank you.
Councilman Lippert.
Oh, just one more clarification. So I think what I was saying is when those streets were built, those were, I believe, built by the developers as opposed to the streets being built by the city. I don't know if we have a city engineer here, but I think that was part of it. So this all goes along with trade-offs of getting the street built versus how much money the city would put in. You know, I think as long as the garbage trucks, which as Heeman was saying, are the same quality, then I'm, you know, excited that we're finally moving forward after a period of time and beginning to support that in a more price, economical way for the residents.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Councilman Glassburn.
Thank you, Mr. Scarl. So as I've mentioned on this topic in the past, I have a little bit of reluctance on this because the condominium residents are not included at this point. But I do want to see this go forward. I understand that integrating the residents on the dedicated streets, the single-family homes, is the most difficult in some regards to put into this process. If we get to the point that we do condo associations, that we do a payment of some kind, it's going to be to the association and it's going to be a single entity and not that complex. But I also just overall want to reiterate in this whole discussion that if the rationale for us doing this is that residents in homes pay taxes, all of our residents, whether they're in apartments or they're in homes or they're in condos, they all pay property taxes either directly or their landowner pays the property tax. So, you know, let's just be mindful of that entire continuum. Everyone pays property tax on some level in some fashion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also,
Go ahead, Mayor.
to the councilman's point, he's absolutely correct. And then also just to remind council that the way that we pay for trash collection currently is through the income tax. Here in North Olmsted, there's, and so that's, you know, something that we also need to keep in mind when we start looking to your point, Councilwoman Heeman, as to when our contract is up with Republic Services. That's something that council is going to have to take into consideration as well, with costs increasing and that type of thing. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Heeman?
Yeah, just a quick statement. I think the difference, the way I see it, you know, as a homeowner, you pay property taxes. As a condominium owner, you pay property taxes. As someone who is in an apartment, your landlord is in a for-profit situation. So they're perhaps making a greater margin, and that isn't an equal benefit, perhaps. But I'm open to discuss it, absolutely. And you know, welcome that discussion, but I think the immediate need is more of an ownership type versus, you know, for-profit. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Councilwoman Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Mr. Mazzarola or the mayor, if the contract ends in 2024, when in 2024 would it be January 1st expiration or December 31st? I'm just leading in with, will we be considering going out for bid next year just to see where rates would be if?
It's, council, Mr. Chairman, to the councilwoman.
Sure.
It's December, so it'll be the end of the calendar year. And to your question, that's something that we are trying to consider right now, because those option years are there. But we would obviously seek advice from the law department as to you know, if we go out to bid, how does that work with option years and that type of thing? So we will certainly keep council updated as to those discussions and then a decision that will need to be made, to your point, next year. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Law Director
Thank you.
Groh.
Just to follow up. And a lot will happen in that period of time, because as other communities are going out to bid, we're gonna have a pretty good feel for where our contract sits in relation to what everybody else is getting. So I've taken a few phone calls, even over, every now and again, I'll get a phone call from other communities talking about this particular issue or the change in services or what are they doing. So people are talking to one another, and you kind of have a pretty good feel of what the market's doing, and who knows with fuel costs and regulations for the you know, facilities and whatnot, the costs are going up. So we'll keep a close eye on it. So if we can kind of gauge which way we think is gonna financially benefit us, that's the path we're taking. So whether it's to go out back or just exercise those bid years and try to exercise those option years before we go to bid. So we'll keep an eye on it, keep you up to date.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I move to recommend ordinance 2022-121 and ask for second.
Second.
Motion made by Councilman Scarl, second by Councilwoman Gilchrist. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. And the Environmental Control Committee has ended at 7:32. Thank you.
The public hearing of December 6, 2022 will now please come to order at 7:35 PM. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Broussard.
Present.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Here.
Mr. Glassburn.
Here.
Ms. Heeman.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Lippert.
Present.
Mr. Scarl.
Present.
Ms. Williamson.
Here.
Thank you. Will the clerk please read the issue before council this evening?
Ordinance 2022-97, an ordinance amending the schedule of uses at 1139.03-1 of Chapter 1139, quote, business districts, end quote, of the Planning and Zoning Code of the codified ordinances of the City of North Olmsted for the purpose of establishing massage establishments operated by the state licensed professionals as a permitted use in the North Olmsted Business District.
Thank you. As a reminder to council, this is a public hearing. We are here to listen to the public comments. You may ask questions and follow up to the audience comments, but there will be a committee meeting at the conclusion of the public hearing for more in-depth questioning. Will Safety Director Schofield please give council and the audience a brief description of the issue at hand?
Good evening, Mr. President and members of council. I'm here on behalf of Director Upton this evening. The legislation in front of you is a companion piece to the work we did on 2022-98, which amended the code around massage establishments, requiring that all practitioners within that establishment be duly licensed by the state. So in this case, the schedule of uses table contained in the zoning code establishes where certain types of businesses are permitted and further establishes the conditions by which they are permitted to be there. Ordinance 2022-097 further defines massage establishments and ensures that businesses that locate in the city meet all of the requirements set forth in the newly amended Chapter 749 on massage establishments that was recently passed by council. Again, this legislation is a companion piece to the work you've done before. And it is in the hopes of doing this that, one, we have quality establishments in the city, but also curb the prevalence of illicit massage establishments that oftentimes are fronts for human trafficking.
Thank you, Director. If there's anyone in the audience who'd like to address council on ordinance 2022-97 only, please approach the podium and state your name and complete address for the clerk. If you live in a city other than North Olmsted, please state the name of that city and proceed with your comments. You will have up to 5 minutes.
Jim Burns, North Olmsted Chamber of Commerce. And the recently passed Chapter 749, in Section 749.02, it reads, "The requirements of this chapter shall not apply to any establishment or person that provides a massage as a portion of and incidental to services in accordance with a license issued by the state of Ohio." And in this, I don't know, I guess it's a memorandum column or something, what that last column is. For massage establishments, it says, as defined in Chapter 749, and only if in compliance with the regulations therein. State licensed massage enterprises don't have to be compliant with Section 749. They're exempt from it. However, there is a definition of what a massage establishment is in that ordinance. So what I would like to suggest is that this definition, as defined in Chapter 749, stop there and not include the part "and only in compliance with the regulations therein." I would hope that any of these permitted uses that are listed in the zoning code comply with city ordinances, be it the business regulations or the zoning code, whatever. I would hope that they would be in compliance. So I'm not sure you really need something in here that says, "and only if in compliance with regulations therein." I do like the idea, though, that the definition is here as defined in Chapter 749.
Seeing no other comments or questions from the audience, with the agenda being completed and there being no further business to come before council, this public hearing of December 6, 2022 is adjourned at 7:40 PM.
Hey, I'm gonna start. Are you good if I start without you? I'd like to start the Building Zoning Development Committee meeting on 6th of December 2022 at 7:40 PM. Present are council committee members Limpert, Williamson, Heeman, council members Broussard, Scarl, Kelly, Gilchrist, the law director, mayor, safety director, service director, recreation developer, and Mr. Glassburn is also present, Councilman Glassburn. On the agenda is ordinance 2022-97, which is an ordinance amending the schedule of uses at 1139.03-1 of Chapter 1139, Business Districts of the Planning and Zoning Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Homestead for the purpose of establishing massage establishments operated by the state licensed professionals as a permitted use in the North Homestead Business District. Safety Director, I know you just went over this for public hearing, but if you could just maybe just quickly touch on it for the record, and also, do you all have any comments from the public hearing and the residents? That would be appreciated as well.
Good evening to committee chairman and members of council. This legislation that you have in front of you is a companion piece to the amendments made in 2022-98 to massage establishments. It makes it aligns the ordinance with what's in the business code, so it plugs a gap that we found. The schedule of uses table contained in the zoning code establishes where these types of establishments can be in the city and the conditions in which they are able to operate. 2022-97 further defines massage establishments and ensures that businesses that locate within the city meet all the requirements set forth in the newly amended Chapter 749. Again, a companion piece that allows council to curb the prevalence of illicit massage establishments in North Olmsted that we know oftentimes serve as a front for human trafficking operations.
Thank you, Safe Director. Could you just clarify for the council the coding on the table relating to the Cs and Ps?
I'm sorry, I cannot.
Mr. Grove?
Your question again, Mr. Chairman?
So for the table, there's a designation of C and P for within the different areas. If you could
So
just-
what the point of that was is that massage establishments, masotherapists, limited practice of medicine, state licensed massage therapists are not exempted from this particular section. They are required to maintain a license, they're required to register their license, and there are multiple other conditions that are placed upon those individuals in this particular section of 749 Exhibit B, which is the new section. So when we say that just simply it's as defined by 749, that's not the end of it. You also have to be in compliance with it. That's why we put the hook on there that you would be in compliance with it. If you're violating 749, and not every section, by the way, when you see all the permitted uses and a schedule of uses, most of them don't have a corresponding piece of legislation that regulates that particular use. For example, we don't have restaurant regulations, we don't have, office regulations, veterinary clinic, medical facilities, we don't have those. This is a little bit unique because of the nature of the industry where we've seen abuse on several occasions here in North Olmsted. We've seen individuals that are acting in a way that is unlawful. So when we hook it back into 749, we're saying not only are you a licensed masotherapist or massage therapist, as the case may be, but that you're also in compliance with any of the requirements that we have in here. Otherwise, you're violating the zoning code. That was why that was put in there. I'm comfortable with it that way. Director Upton and I went over this a couple times along with Director Schofield, just to make sure that that point was made crystal clear, that it's not enough to just, I'm a state licensed therapist, so therefore I don't have to pay any attention to 749. That's not what that says. 749 will apply to those individuals, and they're required to comply with it. It's not a heavy burden to comply with it. Have a license, register your license, don't do the things that are in here, which are fairly obvious, which your license probably wouldn't allow anyways, and you're probably gonna be just fine under 749 and also under the zoning code as well. So, that's the reason we put it in there. It was just to make it clear that just having a license isn't sufficient. You need to do a couple extra things, and if you do that, it's gonna be fine. If you're not one of those things, then you're not gonna be permitted under 749, and it's gonna be a violation of the zoning code as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Follow-on question, really quick, can you just clarify, I know in the public hearing, there was questions on language and additional explanation within it versus what's in 1149. Do you have any comment on that, or?
Well, that's kind of directed, I think that was, my comment here was directed towards that specific issue. If you want to clarify further on that,
Oh,
Mr. Burns' comments?
yeah, I'm gonna actually call Mr. Burns so we can get on the record in the
And
committee meeting.
And Mr. Chair, that was kind of what I had just addressed
Yeah.
right now, that it was brought into the discussion. I'll let Mr. Burns clarify.
Yeah,
Yes.
so, Mr. Garreau responded back to his observation on why he included that language there. I was just giving you the opportunity to kind of clarify. As I said, I was hearing your comments for the first time, so, do you have any response to that, or did that clarify what you were?
Not really, because, well, and again, this may be a difference we'll have, but when you exempt somebody or a group from complying with the section, the code, that chapter, then you're saying they don't have to do it. And then in here, you're saying, but in order to be allowed a permitted use, you have to comply with that section. And all I'm saying is that 709, they're going to have to follow 709 whether it's written in here or not, or 749 whether it's in here or not. And all I'm saying is keep the part that says as defined, but eliminate the rest of it, because there is a good definition of what a massage establishment is, and that isn't exempted from anything, because it's just a definition. But it's a good definition of a massage establishment. And that's all I'm saying. This thing about having to be in compliance, the state licensed people do not have to be in compliance with this chapter.
Mr. Chairman, but they're not massage establishments either. They offer
By
massage.
definition, they are.
Well, no, they offer a massage. They may offer it as part of their treatment plan, but that doesn't mean that they're a massage establishment under the way it's drafted now. So that's why I'm speaking strictly to the issue of those individuals who are massage establishments, licensed massotherapists or massage therapists with the state of Ohio.
No, I understand what you're
Right.
saying.
I know they're exempted. The individuals you're referring to are expressly exempted. Massage therapists are not exempted under 749. That's specifically directed toward them.
Can I read you the definition of massage establishment?
Are you under 749? You're under Exhibit B? Go ahead.
Massage establishments means an establishment having a fixed place of business where any person, firm, association, or corporation engages in or carries on, permits to advertise the availability of any activity related to or including the provision of a therapeutic massage treatment.
Right. And then
That
O2
encompasses everybody, including
O2
state licensed.
O2A says the requirements of this chapter should not apply to any establishment or person that provides a massage or as a portion of or incidental to services in accordance with a license issued by any of the following. The only person left that's providing massage under what we've drafted here that's regulated by this are massotherapists.
But the point is, this ordinance we're discussing tonight
Right.
is what is a permitted use,
Understood.
okay? And a massage establishment, if it's not a state license thing, then it's not a permitted use.
It could be a state license thing that's not complying with our code section as well. and
Okay.
it wouldn't be a permitted use either. So there's two ways to become a non-permitted use. Either A, not having a license issued by the state of Ohio, or B, having one issued by the state of Ohio and not following 749, which would also cause you to be in violation of the zoning code. So there's two ways to
Well,
get
the
there.
rate
Hey, Mr. Burns,
749.
hey, Mr. Burns, I'm gonna stop you right there. I appreciate,
Okay,
I appreciate you giving that. I've got clarity now. We can sync back up afterwards,
can I
but,
make one more?
quickly,
Just real quick.
quickly, Mr. Burns.
Jim Burns, 3978 Dover Center.
Yes.
I was on the task force to put together the new zoning code that we have and all this, and I believe the answer to your question, that wasn't answered, is where it says P, it's permitted, and where it's C, it can be a conditional use.
P is, yeah, I believe P is,
Permitted use and conditional use. This makes it a permitted use,
right.
which it wasn't mentioned at all, and it's been kind of subsumed into other categories of like and similar use to, I don't know, some sort of maybe medical or office or something. I don't know how it's always been treated, but this specifically identifies that. It's a good zoning practice to be more specific in that regard. That's why it was done.
Thank you. Questions from committee? Ms. Heeman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to comment that I personally like the well-defined clarity. I believe that we have had many discussions around the quote intent of something, and it actually it should never be left to an intent. It should always be left to the language. So thank you, Law Director.
Any other questions from committee? I would just like to echo, I think it's important that we cover all exceptions, so to speak. And if that involves language in both areas, I'll kind of reserve my trust to the law department that they've labeled that correctly in language. Any questions from council? One last question, just, can we clarify the color code of the yellow?
Unfortunately, I don't have an exhibit attached to my particular piece, and if I did, it would be black and white.
There's a B1 is labeled yellow.
I can't speak to the issue of how it's colored out like that. This was how it was pre-existing. It existed like this in its current format in the code and online. I don't know why it goes with yellow, green, red, and some other color other than, well, here it is. Actually, it's B1, B2, B3, and B4. It's breaking down the different business districts and where it's permitted and where it's not permitted or where it's conditional. So under this one,
Okay, so yellow is conditional, but I see, okay. All right.
correct.
Got it.
Yellow, Mr. Chair, is just
Yep.
the.
It's the
B1
zoning districts that you're dealing
Okay.
with.
Just for
Business
your-
1,
for
Business
your-
2, Business 3, and
Oh, I
Business 4.
see,
Ease of reading.
there is a different color, they conveniently put pink and red right next to each other.
And that they don't really line up across the top,
Okay.
which doesn't help either.
All right, thank you for
That
clarifying
one's
that.
beyond my
I was-
control.
I was trying to Da Vinci code the color code.
Mr. Chairman, it took me some time to figure out how to crack into this particular exhibit to add anything to it, so I
Okay,
did the best one could.
great, thank you very much. If there's no other questions from council?
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to recommend ordinance 2022-097. Can I ask for a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. And I'll conclude the Building Zoning Development Committee meeting at 7:55 PM. Thank you.
The caucus meeting of December 6, 2022 will now come to order at 7:55 PM. Present are all of council, the mayor, law director, finance director, HR director, safety director, service director, recreation director, special assistant to the mayor, and guests. If there are no additions or corrections, the caucus meeting minutes of November 29th, 2022 are approved as written. Regarding suspension, there is one item on the agenda being requested for suspension this evening. On second evening, ordinance 2022-121. Mayor Jones, would you like to speak about this?
Thank you, Mr. President. This particular piece of legislation was discussed in tonight's committee meeting. if council would consider suspension of the rules for this particular ordinance, we would be able to move forward and get this in place before January 1st.
Okay. Any objections from council to suspension on 2022-121? Councilman Lippert?
What's the January 1st implication? Just,
We will begin, Mr. President, to the councilman, we will be working with Republic Services over the next few weeks, because this ordinance would go into effect January 1st, 2023. If council would allow us to have an additional 2 weeks to work with Republic, because the holidays, and people are not, might not be all together at work, the last week of December, essentially, it would be helpful to us, because then we can just make sure that all of the paperwork and communications that need to be finalized are completed.
and that would just be for, Mr. Chair, Mr. President, so billing, basically, right?
Exactly.
For the first of the year, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah. I have no objections.
Seeing no other comments regarding suspension, signing legislation, ordinances 2022-123 and 124 will both be assigned to finance. Before scheduling committee meetings for Tuesday, December 13th, I just wanted to point out that our December 20th, 2022 council meeting we will be changing that format to virtual. So Councilman Glassburn, would you like to schedule finance for Tuesday, December 13th?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I guess 7 o'clock will be the time to be.
Thank you. Does anyone on council have anything else they wish to bring up this evening? Anything from the administration?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you. Seeing nothing else, the
Oh,
caucus,
I'm sorry,
Mr. Lippert?
Should we ask about the finance meeting?
Mr. President, I will try to circulate with everyone before the end of this brief period between now and 8 o'clock to see if folks are amenable to moving up the weekend Finance Committee meeting to earlier in the day.
Okay.
So if you have an objection, let me know.
And you're on the clock, 2 minutes. All right, seeing nothing else, the caucus meeting of December 6, 2022 is adjourned at 7:58 PM. The council meeting of December 6, 2022 will now please come to order at 8:01 PM. Audience is invited to join council in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Broussard.
Present.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Here.
Mr. Glassberg.
Here.
Ms. Seaman.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Limpert.
Present.
Mr. Scarl.
Present.
Ms. Williamson. Here.
If there are no additions or corrections, the special council meeting minutes of November 29, 2022 are approved as written. There is one item on the agenda being requested for suspension this evening on second reading, ordinance 2022-121. Moving into reports, Mayor Daley Jones, do you have a report this evening?
I do, Mr. President, thank you. First, I would like to let council and our community know that earlier today, former mayor of North Olmsted, Ed Boyle, had passed away from leukemia. So our thoughts and prayers are with his family during this time. And if we hear additional information about any services that might be held here in his memory, we will notify you. December is National Impaired Driving Month. So far in 2022, there have been 10,197 OVI-related crashes in Ohio. 13% of those crashes involved a fatality of serious injury. 10.5% of all of Ohio's OVI crashes occurred in Franklin County. And the Ohio routes with the most OVI crashes are I-75, I-71, US 20, and I-70. So far in 2022, there have been 13,925 OVI arrests in Ohio. 8% of those arrests involve marijuana and 16% involved other drugs. We want everyone to be safe, so please remember that if you feel different, you drive different. According to provisional statistics, 16 people were killed on Ohio's roadways this Thanksgiving holiday. During the 5-day reporting period from Wednesday, November 23rd at midnight and through Sunday, November 27th, 16 people were killed in 15 fatal crashes. In 2001, there were 14 fatal crashes in which 17 people were killed. Of the 16 killed this year, 2 were pedestrians, 10 were not wearing a seatbelt, and 6 crashes involved impaired driving. Please remember to wear your seatbelts. There will be an American Red Cross blood drive tomorrow from 1 until 7 p.m. at the North Olmsted Senior Center. Also tomorrow is National Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. 81 years ago on that date, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Hunger never takes a holiday. The Oxcart Food Pantry is in need of many things this holiday season, and the pantry has developed a December donation wish list, which includes both donations of food items as well as toiletry and household items. If you can help, the list is on our city's website, and online financial donations can also be made. The Maple Food Pantry will be hosting a mobile food pantry on Tuesday, December 20th from 4:30 until 6:30 p.m. at Maple School. The city's Department of Recreation and Public Engagement presented Holiday Hangout this past Friday evening, December 2nd, at the North Olmsted Community Cabin. Over 125 people attended the event, which included photos and visits with Santa. There were many North Olmsted families in attendance, and a good time was had by all. The North Olmsted Arts Commission is sponsoring their annual holiday home decorating contest this year. Entries must be a residential property and it must be located within the city of North Olmsted. You can enter the contest now through Sunday, December 11th. Only decorations visible from the roadway will be subject to judging. Homes are limited to winning once every 3 years. Judging by the North Olmsted Arts Commission will take place between December 11th and December 16th. It is suggested that lights be kept on from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. on judging nights. All judging will be completed no later than 10 p.m. Judging by the commission will be based on arrangement, variety, and overall wow factor in the following categories. Traditional or classic Christmas, most festive, Griswold Award, meaning visible from outer space, best outdoor Christmas tree, and the judge's favorite. Winners will be announced on December 17th, and as of this evening, we have more than 20 homes already entered into the contest. 3Z continues to make their final pass for leaf collection in our city this week. We anticipate their work being concluded by December 12th. As December is now well underway, here's a friendly reminder about snow removal in the city of North Olmsted. We are well stocked with the necessary salt. Our city vehicles are ready for the onset of winter. The service department commences snow plowing and road salting operations during the winter months as needed. This service affects the safety of all residents and motorists. Following city ordinances for winter parking allows us to serve you better. Remember, no parking on hydrant side of the street, no parking between 2 and 6 a.m., or when the snow depth exceeds 2 inches. The city road salting policy is as follows. All main routes and streets will be plowed and salted. All school zones will be plowed and salted. All interior streets will be plowed and salted only at intersections, grades, curves, deep roadside ditches, and mains leading out of the developments. However, this policy could change depending on what the foreman decides. Do not approach operational plow trucks on the street. And as a sensible salting practice, there will be limited salting during the late evening and early morning hours from 11 p.m. until 4 a.m., as salting is not as effective due to low traffic volumes. I have a feeling that I'll be repeating many of those sentences a lot over the next few months. The Kiwanis Club and Key Club of North Olmsted will host a pancake breakfast with Santa on Sunday, December 11th at the Red Barn at Frostville. There are 2 seatings, one at 9 and another at 11 a.m. Reservations are necessary, but it says that they need to be made no later than December 6th, which is today. So hopefully you've all made those reservations if you wanted to attend. And finally, I was pleased to attend the grand opening of our newest businesses with our Economic and Community Development Director Upton recently. Zambrano, a high-end luxury furniture store, has opened in Great Northern Mall, and Things Outlet has taken residence next door to Giant Eagle. We welcome them both to North Olmsted. And Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Director of Law Garreau, do you have a report this evening?
Thank you, Mr. President. I do. Just a follow-up to the mayor's observation about Mayor Boyle. I did speak to his daughter today, and it's my understanding they will be scheduling some services here in North Olmsted. He had lived in Maryland, and then he was most recently living in the Toledo area, but he's going to come back to North Olmsted. So you should keep an eye out for the notices. And again, as the mayor said, I'm sure if we receive anything here from the mayor's office, we'll let you know as we go. I want to come back and circle back to an issue from it's kind of been around for quite a while here, but to put a kind of a bookend on it. That is the case of the dogs, the Clegg Road dog cases and all the different cases that we had to deal with, criminal cases and civil cases. And I just wanted to bring you back and give you a final conclusion as to how everything wrapped up. Because compliance issues were being satisfied as recently as a couple months ago, up until really November 16th. So I wanted to bring you up to speed on that. So in criminal cases, 21 CRB 818, 819, 915, and 1261, the defendant pled to 5 counts of dog at large, was fined $1,500. She pled to 1 count of failure to reasonable control the dogs, was fined $150. Convicted on 2 counts of vicious dogs, $500 fine times 2 plus 12 days in jail. Served 4 consecutive 3-day weekends from June 22nd through August 5th of this year. Total fines were $2,650 plus another $1,400 in costs for just over $4,000 in Rocky River, plus 12 days in jail. In a civil case, 21 CV 950697, the city had moved the court for a preliminary injunction to enforce the final administrative orders that took place here to destroy the dogs. Motion went to hearing with the court. With city witnesses, the court granted the motion toward the tail end of last year. Defendants had at that point already removed the dogs from the jurisdiction of the court. from Cuyahoga County, and they were no longer in her possession. Consequently, they claimed there was an inability to comply with the court injunction by retrieval and humane disposal. The case went to mediation at the court's request to get over these types of issues, and the following terms were agreed to in mediation in just before the summer of this year. The defendant paid an additional $1,964.94 to the city of North Olmsted in relation to workers' comp costs incurred by our patrolman who was bitten by one of the dogs. Two of the defendants performed, Amanda performed 40 hours of community service, Jessica performed 20 hours of community service, and they were both required to take and complete animal safety training with certified animal trainers at certified facilities. The dogs, the vicious dogs, were removed from the city of North Olmsted and to remain that way. Defendants were required to disclose the identity of third parties in possession of the dogs so the city could contact them and the appropriate jurisdictions, as the case may be, to advise them that the dogs were in fact deemed to be vicious. And the injunction remained in effect pending compliance. Defendant, my understanding, has been reported back. Defendant has been in full compliance. Regrettably, the one part of this that is unfortunate is it appears the homeowners did not have homeowners insurance coverage to deal with this type of injury. So unfortunately for those people who were attacked, there may not really be a very meaningful avenue of recovery for them. It's not something it wasn't part of our case, it wasn't something we did, but we're certainly mindful of that outcome for them because it's unfortunate. It was irresponsible, negligent behavior on the part of the animal owners, and multiple people were seriously injured as a result of it, for which there probably could not be a financial recovery because there is no insurance, and frankly, I'm not sure a judgment would get paid anyways. We have kept in regular contact with Marge Bowden and Tom McCafferty, and we spoke once to Michael Barna, the individuals that were involved. They do have private counsel, and I trust that private counsel has advised them of what options they may have. But as far as North Olmsted goes, that would bring that to a conclusion of all the different things. So we were satisfied with that outcome, particularly jail time, which was really unusual to get that type of a sentence for these types of charges that wasn't suspended. So she did a significant amount of jail time. So should, unfortunately, this ever happen again, we have a new code, we'll have a new way of processes to deal with it, as courtesy of Councilman Kelly and his ordinance. And maybe the outcome can be a little smoother next time. But notwithstanding that, I'm satisfied with where this case went, to try to do the best we could with what we were given. And I just want to let you know, as a bookend, that's kind of how this whole thing concluded. And it was satisfied just as recently as in the past 60, 90 days. So took a while, but we got there. So I just want to let you know. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Director of Finance Kopfer, do you have a report this evening?
Yes, I do, Mr. President. I'm happy that this was resolved, and I was there when the check from the individuals came, and we deposited it. So
They brought it to the law
it was
department.
last week, I think.
Brought it
so.
to the law department and went straight to finance department.
That's right. So, so at least it's done, and a good job by the law department, because there was a lot of curves and turns in this process. So, secondly, I submitted the September month-end summary and detail financial statements. I think they were emailed on Monday, and narrative for the third quarter, as well as you should have received the budget, the electronic budget document this evening, and also the books that are, I assume they were given to you or in your offices, so that you can have happy reading until the weekend. And look forward to spending some quality time with you in the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you. Before moving into council committee reports, I'd like to ask that we have a moment of silence in remembrance of former Mayor Ed Boyle. Please join me. Thank you. Moving into council committee reports, Councilwoman Williamson, Chairwoman of the Public Safety, Health and Welfare Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening, Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Lippert, Chairman of the Building, Zoning and Development Committee. Do you have a report?
I do have a report, Mr. President, thank you. The Building Zoning Development Committee met this evening, December 6th, at 7:40 PM. Present were committee members Limpert, Williamson, and Heeman, council member, all of council, the mayor, law director, safety director, service director, economic development director, HR director, and recreation director. On the agenda was ordinance 2022-97, which is amending the schedule use at 1139.03-1 of chapter 1139 business districts of the planning and zoning code of codified ordinances North Olmsted for the purpose of establishing and operating a state licensed professional as a permitted use in North Olmsted Business District for massage establishments. After some discussion to clarify language, this followed a public hearing on this subject around chapter 749 of massage establishments and 1139 of the planning and zoning code on how those individuals are licensed to perform massage and our guidelines on massage establishments. The motion was recommended to council by a vote of 3-0, and the meeting concluded at 7:50 PM. Mr. President, this concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilwoman Heeman, Chairwoman of the Recreation, Public Parks and Buildings Committee. Do you have a report?
I do not, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Councilman Glassburn, Chairman of the Finance Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
No report this evening, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Kelly, Chairman of the Streets and Transportation Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
No report, but if I could, I'd like to have a moment of personal privilege.
Of course.
So Saturday, December 3rd, if you heard all the sirens around town, the Cops and Kids event was held at North Olmsted High School, and it was a great example of cooperation between the police department and the schools, and policemen from all the general area around here. 108 children were each given $150 to spend at Walmart for their Christmas. And these families need a little extra help this year, and they got breakfast and they got lunch, and Santa was there, and I want to thank Mayor Jones for coming by to greet everybody as they were heading out to their cars, even though it got a little bit rainy at that point. And I think a good time was had by all. North Olmsted Police Department should be commended for all the work they put into this. And also the people at Walmart that go out of their way to help during this event. So that was what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Scarl, Chairman of the Environmental Control Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. The Environmental Control Committee met tonight, December 6th, at 7:15. In attendance were committee members Scarl, Gilchrist, and Kelly, all of council, the mayor, law director, HR director, safety director, service director, rec director, special assistant to the mayor. On the agenda was ordinance 2022-121, an ordinance authorized the city of North Olmsted pursuant to section 941.01 of the Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code of the codified ordinances of the city of North Olmsted to partially contribute to the costs incurred for refuse collection by owners of certain residential structures not otherwise authorized to receive refuse collection services from the city of North Olmsted and declaring an emergency. After questions and discussions, this was to have approximately 675 homes receive 25% discount off their monthly refuse bill on the non-dedicated streets. And this was recommended to all of council by a vote of 3-0. And the committee concluded at 7:32. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Gilchrist, Chairwoman of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. Do you have a report this evening?
I do not, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any letters or communications to come before council at this time?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you. We'll move into audience participation. Thank you for attending tonight's council meeting. Public comments offer the opportunity for members of the public to share information and bring issues and concerns to the attention of city council members. Those attending city council meetings should show the same respect to others that they wish to have shown to them. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to address council, please come to the podium, state and spell your name and address for the clerk. If you live in a city other than North Olmsted, please state the name of that city and proceed with your comments. You will have up to 5 minutes. Seeing no comments from the audience, we will now move into legislation.
Legislation on third reading. Resolution 2022-108, introduced by Mayor Jones, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a one-year contract with Tech Computer, Inc. in order to provide maintenance and repair services to computer hardware and software in the North Olmsted Police Department and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2022-108 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-108 made by Councilwoman Williamson, seconded by Councilman Kelly. Roll call, please.
I'm sorry. Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Glassman.
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Yes.
Mr. Sco.
Yes.
Mr. Lippert.
Yes.
Ms. Heeman.
Yes. Yes.
Resolution 2022-108 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Resolution 2022-109, introduced by Mayor Jones, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a one-year contract with Tech Computer, Inc. in order to provide maintenance and repair services to computer hardware and software in the North Olmsted Fire Department and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-109 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-109 made by Councilwoman Williamson, seconded by Councilman Kelly. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Ms. Heeman.
Yes.
Mr. Lippert.
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn.
Yes.
Mr. Scarl.
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Yes.
Resolution 2022-109 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Resolution 2022-110, introduced by Mayor Jones, a resolution dispensing with the formal RFP process and authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Personnel Selection Services to provide entry-level and written promotional testing services, pre-employment testing, and police and fire promotional testing services, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I would move to adopt 2022-110 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-110 made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilman Lippert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn.
Yes.
Mr. Lippert.
Yes.
Ms. Williamson.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Scarl.
Yes.
Ms. Heeman.
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist.
Yes.
Resolution 2022-110 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Resolution 2022-111, introduced by Mayor Jones, a resolution dispensing with the formal RFP process and authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with PrideCo to provide pre-employment testing and police and fire promotional testing services.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-111 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-111 made by Councilwoman Williamson, seconded by Councilman Kelly. Roll call, please.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-111 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance 2022-116, introduced by Mayor Jones, an ordinance establishing new and revised program fee ranges for use of park and recreation facilities and further restating said program fees and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 2022-116 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2022-116 made by Councilwoman Heeman, seconded by Councilman Scarl. Roll call, please.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-116 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Resolution 2022-117, introduced by Mayor Jones, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Poolside Adventures to install an aquatic climbing wall at the Recreation Center and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 2022-117 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-117 made by Councilwoman Heeman, seconded by Councilman Scarl. Roll call, please.
Ms. Seaman?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
No.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes, with comment. While I believe this is a good addition, this is something that should have gone through the budget process, and I would encourage us to get back in the process of putting these items into the budget and so that they can be properly weighed against other uses of funds.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-117 is adopted by a vote of 6-1.
Resolution 2022-119, introduced by Mayor Jones, a resolution authorizing the Director of Human Services to solicit statements of qualification, parens SOQ, and parens from qualified firms or individuals to serve as the city's labor negotiator, and further authorizing the mayor, following approval of the Board of Control, to enter into a contract with the firm or individual selected in the SOQ process and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I move to adopt 2022-119 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-119 made by Councilman Glassburn, seconded by Councilman Lippert. Roll call, please.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-119 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Ordinance 2022-97, introduced by Mayor Jones, an ordinance amending the schedule of uses at 1139.03-1 of Chapter 1139, quote, business districts, and quote, of the Planning and Zoning Code of Codified Ordinances of the City of North Olmsted for the purpose of establishing massage establishments operated by state licensed professionals as permitted use in the North Olmsted Business District. Ordinance 2022-121, introduced by Mayor Jones, an ordinance authorizing the City of North Olmsted pursuant to Section 941.1D of the Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Olmsted to partially contribute to the costs incurred for refuse collection by owners of certain residential structures not otherwise authorized to receive refuse collection services from the City of North Olmsted and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Councilman.
I move to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings, as this was heard in committee tonight, December 6th, and it is beneficial to those residents to move this along so they can begin realizing a 25% less in their monthly refuse payments. And I ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings for ordinance 2022-121 made by Councilman Scarl and seconded by Councilwoman Gilchrist. Roll call, please.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Mr. Lippert?
Yes, with comment, I think the administration has taken a prudent approach here in trying to get this implemented and phased in over time for the benefit of the residents as well as managing our budget. So thank you for bringing this forward. Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes.
That motion passes by a vote of 7-0. If there is anyone in the audience who wishes to address council regarding ordinance 2022-121, please approach the podium now.
Mr. President, seeing none, I move to adopt ordinance 2022-121 and ask for a second.
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2022-121 made by Councilman Scarl, seconded by Councilwoman Gilchrist. Roll call, please.
Mr. Scarl?
Yes.
Ms. Gilchrist?
Yes.
Mr. Glassburn?
Yes, with comment. I'm glad that this is going forward, but I also look forward to future conversations about our next steps for condominiums or other residents that are negatively impacted.
Ms. Heeman?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Limpert?
Yes.
Ms. Williamson?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-121 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Legislation on first reading, ordinance 2022-123, an ordinance to make a transfer of appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures for the city of North Olmsted for the year ending December 31st, 2022, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Ordinance 2022-124, an ordinance amending and reestablishing section 139.99 of chapter 139 of the Administrative Code of the Codified Ordinances of the City of North Olmsted entitled, quote, Department of Public Safety, end quote, in order to create the position of part-time master plans examiner within the Division of Building.
Mr. President, I introduce and place on first reading.
Thank you. Before moving into scheduling committee meetings, I'd like to announce once again that the December 20th council meeting has been moved to a virtual format. Councilman Glassburn, would you like to schedule finance for Tuesday, December 13th?
Yes, Mr. President, would like to schedule finance for Tuesday, the 13th at 7 p.m. to consider 2022, 123, and 124, as well as the annual budget.
Thank you. With the agenda being completed and there being no further business to come before council, this meeting of December 6, 2022 is adjourned at 8:32 p.m.
We'll do finance on Saturday at 8 a.m. for those wanting to know. 8 a.m. Thank you. Yeah.